morning. Welcome back to the second hour of LoveBabz, LoveTalk on Babz Rawls-Ivy. Woo! I'm delighted. I've got an actual Fisk person in the house today. Hey, Will Spivey. Unmute yourself and let's get into it. So you need the babies there. You need the babies there to do the technology work. Good morning.
Good morning, Babz.
How are you? Okay, go ahead.
Rawls-Ivy.
I knew it was coming.
It was.
I knew it was coming. How's it going?
Good morning.
You all right? Everything is good?
I'm doing good. Very good. Thank you.
Listen, I got the books yesterday.
Fantastic.
Nice. All right, so let me tell people a little bit about you. Because it's on the back of the book. So William Spivey hails from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and is a graduate of Fisk University. He's the proud father of 3 adult children and 9 grandchildren, all girls, #girl granddad. We love that. He and his wife, Carol, the very beautiful Carol, reside in Palm Coast, Florida. I have no idea where that is, but it's in Florida, i.e. Jurassic Park. So, so his other works include Estranged Americans, Fallacies of Freedom, Citizenship, and Racism, along with a contributing chapter in the anthology Field Notes on Allyship, Achieving Equality Together. So Strong Beginnings is the first of a trilogy, and keep both eyes out for the next installment, Zane's Chillin', coming out in 2024. And you can follow him at William F. Spivey.com, and on Medium, williamspivey.medium.com. Hey. All right, so let's talk about Estranged Americans, Fallacies of Freedom, Citizenship, and Racism. So talk to me about why you felt compelled to write this book, and what is it about? Because I haven't had a chance to read it. I just kind of glanced through. I imagine it is about the history of racism in this country, and the notions of freedom and citizenship, and how racism ties it all together in a bow.
It's a collection of 26 essays, and they were written over a period of time. And the ones I selected are, evergreen. They're not tied to a particular moment in time, like some of the political stuff I write. And if I can go through some of the table of contents, it'll give you an idea of what the book is about. The souls of white folk, who is white in America and why. Parvis Sequitur Ventrum, which is the rule that perpetrated slavery and legalized rape. The American middle class is only meant for white people. Does anyone think Thomas Jefferson was stupid? The chronic underfunding of HBCUs, the would-be master and won't-be slaves, and that's about what was going on in Nashville with Justin Pearson, when the Tennessee legislature tried to remove them from the Tennessee House of Representatives, the leading white men of Edgefield, which is more historical in nature, and Jim Crow is economic oppression and domestic terrorism. So that gives you an idea of some of the types of topics that I address. And they're, for the most part, opinion pieces, some of it straight history with interpretation that you won't find in a Florida school book.
So if I remember this correctly, you started writing about these things long before they started having these ridiculous conversations around critical race theory and the banning of information in books and the telling of American history through the eyes of Blackness and Black history. So what is the catalyst for you for doing this work? Because this is not easy work.
I initially started on, I guess it was Facebook, and just writing whatever was on my mind, responding to the events of the day. And I got into history a little bit, but it really started for me, I guess it was a single moment. I attended a funeral, one of my Fisk classmates, and there was another Fiskite there, a guy named Malcolm Cunningham. He's an attorney in West Palm Beach. And he said, "I've been reading your stuff. I like it." He said, "There's a book you need to read." And it was The Devil in the Grove, which was about the Groveland boys, the Groveland Four, about 4 young Black men that were accused unjustly of rape. One of them was shot 100 times or so while he was being captured. The sheriff there ultimately shot and killed one of them while transporting them back for a second trial. It involves Thurgood Marshall as a young lawyer long before he got to the Supreme Court. It involves NAACP and a lot of stuff. And there's so much history. And what shocked me was all this was taking place 30 miles from where I lived in I lived in Orlando at the time and in Groveland, Florida. And I was hearing and had heard nothing about it. So there's so much history everywhere. I also lived 10 miles at a time from Ocoee, Florida, where in 1920 there was a big massacre there after two men tried to vote. And basically they either shot and killed or burned out every Black person in the town. And Ocoee, Florida had no Black citizens for over 40 years. And that was 10 miles from where I lived.
Wow.
So I started
So when you find out this information, Bill, look, you feel compelled to do something about it. Like you feel compelled to what? Dig deeper, research, find out if it's true, find out how much of it is true. Like what is talk to me about what drives you to do this? I mean, beyond you went to a funeral, you caught up with a fifth person. That's one story. You've got a whole book of essays of these little known historical facts.
Seems like all the research leads to something else, and you uncover more things as you go. And the beautiful thing about it is you start to get context, and you understand that this thing relates to that thing. And I'll tell you it won't disappoint you because you know me, because you'll understand this. But when I went to Fisk, I was a basketball player. I wasn't a poet like you would wanted me to be, and there was so much that was around me that I had no idea about. I would cut through the administration building and I would not know and didn't know till 20 years later that Aaron Douglas had painted some murals called God's Trombones on the second floor, and they were there for all to see. Aaron Douglas was on the faculty at Fisk when I was there, and I had no idea. I had been to Kelly Miller Smith's church, and it didn't mean anything to me, and only later did I realize he was one of the Freedom Riders and involved in that movement. And there was so much history right around me that, besides the stuff you couldn't help but know about, like the Jubilee Singers, that I wasn't aware of and just had no concept of until I started, really looking into these things. The Fisk Library has a Bible, one of the three slave Bibles known, where they took out some of the stuff they didn't want slaves to read about revolution. So Fisk has one of the three Bibles in the world in the library, where I spent a lot of time reading the newspaper to see if my name was in the paper from playing basketball. So I had all that available to me and missed it. So now it's my obligation to go back and fill in the blanks.
Okay, so I appreciate the obligation part. Okay, so you got this book of essays, and I imagine this is not going to be the last book of essays, because the more that you go down these rabbit holes of information, the more there is to talk about this, bringing this history to the light. And it's not lost on me, Bill, that you live in Florida, which is leading the charge with dismantling Black history and history as we know it to students and to anybody who is interested in history.
Yeah, as you know, Florida initially declined to accept the advanced placement Black history course because Ron DeSantis, our governor, didn't like what was in it. And I've had a chance to really get into that. And it is true when he says that Florida has a comprehensive take on Black history. They cover a whole lot of different subjects, but their take on history is so wrong that I felt compelled to write about it. And I wrote a letter to the editor that was published in the Orlando Sentinel. But basically, several times, Florida, in their history guidelines, they say that the increase in the well-known and well-documented increase in the number of enslaved people during America's history was due to natural reproduction, they call it. A lot of historians call it natural increase. And what they don't say, that the cause of that was really forced breeding and rape. And those are words you will not find in a Florida history book. And also, the Florida history book will tell you about any abolitionist they could find, any white abolitionist they could find, and tell you about all the intent of white people to do better. And they'll tell you about Lincoln's intent. They'll tell you about everybody else. And nobody will say it like Patrick Henry said it, when he said he can't believe that he was so lazy that he couldn't do anything about except accept the value of his slaves, that and that the Christians accepted it, and it's crazy. So you will not get an honest view about Black history in Florida, although they cover a lot of subjects.
Okay, I appreciate that, and thank you for doing that, because I think we are so under siege, and I think that everyday ordinary people have to sort of be about the business of doing what you're doing, is to seek out this information and then elevating it on whatever platforms that they have at their disposal. Otherwise, I think this rich history will be lost.
Yeah, and I've got grandchildren, of 5 of which are pretty local to me, and they're an hour away, so I see them quite regularly. And they're now getting to the point where, the oldest of that group are now 10 and 11, and one just turned 12. And I asked them, "What are you learning about history?" And they tell me, and they say, "We learned about Ruby Bridges." I said, "Okay, well, what'd you learn about Ruby Bridges?" And my favorite, I can't say that. One of them. All the others will just have to forgive me. But
okay,
one of them said
you're gonna have to up that Christmas list now.
My favorite for this type of conversation, she told me that Ruby Bridges was bullied, and that she was aware that she had to go to classes by herself, and that people were yelling and screaming at her and things like that. I said, "Oh, did you learn that in school?" He said, "No, I saw a movie on Disney Plus." I said, "Did they teach you about it in school?" She said, "No." And I talked to the others, and none of them really had any concept of what she went through. And even if you look through the publicly available information, you can see, and there's a famous Norman Rockwell painting
Yes.
of Ruby walking with a couple of marshals, and that's all you see in the background. You never see the crowd like you might see from Little Rock Central, yelling and screaming and hurling insults and calling her, names. And it's like it's already, the tale has been whitewashed. And so that she was the first Black child to integrate a school in New Orleans. And yeah, that's a good thing, but you don't hear about any of the bad things associated with it.
That's true. And she's very much still alive. Like she's in my age cohort, right? Like she's a relatively young
and she's
woman.
a civil rights activist. She's written a few graphic novels and children's books describing her experience. And I've given a thought to collaborating with my grandchildren on writing a book about their interests and what they want to know about Black history. But I'm working on toning it down so it's still age appropriate, because I haven't done age appropriate as of yet.
Well, that what, that might be fun. I mean, I think you could learn a lot when you try to explain history to children. But I think it's a necessary act, because if they don't get it, if our children don't get it from us, where are they going to get it from? So this is
what I love is that they ask great questions.
Mm-hmm.
And when they ask a question, I feel that opens the door for me to say whatever the answer is. But if they don't ask, I'm not trying to impose on them and start, telling them about, some of the things I could talk about.
I get that. Okay, so this book is out. People can buy it. People can get it. People should get it. They should read it. It's well done. I can't wait to pour over it. Thank you for signing it. I appreciate that. Now we move on to the next book, which I think I know a little something about. Strong Beginnings, which I love the way this looks. Like I love this cover. So talk about this story, and it has historical overtures in it as well. But talk about this story, and I mean, this is a work of fiction, historical fiction, which seems to be all the rage right now. Like my sister friend Victoria Christopher Murray has a historical book out with a co-author on Rawls-Ivy, the woman that was friends with was the librarian for one of the richest land barons in the country at that particular time. I think it's the Vanderbilts. And then she has another historical book, fiction book out. So there's a couple of folks who are writing fiction, nonfiction with historical reference to it. Talk about the strong beginnings? Because the name of the family is called Strong.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the inspiration came from it initially. I have a friend from the Strong family that mentioned her grandfather was lynched. And, that really got me thinking, is how do you even deal with that? And the truth is that she didn't know a whole lot about the circumstances. And you got to feel like that's a thing that's going to affect your family. And also, I'm thinking that, every Black person that's been in America for a few generations is not too many degrees away from somebody that's been lynched. So, I started working from that story without having any real information about it. But there was also another lynching that took place nearby, a real lynching called the Moores Ford Bridge lynchings, where two couples were killed and shot on a bridge over 100 times each. And in my story, without giving away too much, the grandfather of the person that I know witnessed the Moores Ford Bridge lynchings and was seen by a boy who later revealed that he saw him there. The grandfather was killed, and the family had to leave town and and get away. But then 50 years later, it all comes back, and they end up going back to Covington, Georgia, to resolve that matter.
So how do you now there's love stories in this thing, right? Like there's it's not dreary. It's a story of a family and their ups and downs, and they've got love interests and challenges and tension. So how do you incorporate that into a story with such heavy historical overview?
Well, several years ago, when you pointed me to NaNoWriMo, I understood that there were plotters and pantsers, people that write by the seat of their pants. And I'm one of those. So, I start with a concept and then I write and it goes wherever it goes. And I think I probably got my literary background from comic books that I grew up reading comic books. And in comic books, you have to really keep track of the plot because from issue to issue, from whatever, you have to really, keep track of the characters and and merge all the stories together. So it seems like that part came naturally to me, to merging together a bunch of storylines and having it come out. And fortunately, it came out to be about 70-some thousand words at the end, and the perfect length for a novel for that genre. But I based it, when you write about what you know in some sense. And because I had a family to work with where I knew, the parents, the children, and how they interacted together and stuff like that, it wasn't that hard because I wasn't starting from scratch. So I was able to take those characters and give them each, an individuality where they're distinct people as opposed to just filler.
So I mean, the lead character is a woman. Well, I mean, she's in the middle of this love triangle. If I recall correctly. And how do you write from that voice? What inspired you to write from that voice? How do you capture women? How do you do that?
First, I based it on real, actually, people in this case, because there was two women that I merged to create this character. One of them is a friend of yours, Kelly Wickham Hurst, who I basically borrowed her career as an assistant principal at that time, who went on to become and do greater things. And then also Patrice Strong, who I went to school with and was a good friend with and still am a good friend with after all this time. So I was able to take those qualities and merge them. And then as the book went on and she met different people, she was in a relationship when it started. Then she broke up with that gentleman who didn't appreciate what he had. And then, single for the first time in several years, she was getting the attention of two different men, and she eventually chose she wasn't sleeping around, but she did choose. Eventually, she had to make a choice, and one of those would have turned out to have been a pretty bad choice.
Oh, and so how do you keep up with the tension? Like, Did you read other books? Are you a romance reader? Are you a Black women reader, author reader? Like how do you write books of fiction that can satisfy uh uh the strong fiction readers out there who like historical romance and drama and intrigue?
Well, I'm waiting for the reviews to come in, so the jury's out as to whether they're satisfied or not.
Yeah, but I mean, but you must have some inkling of this, because you wrote this. This is your baby, and you've taken a great deal of care with this. Were you nervous about this? Did you feel like, oh, I don't know if I could do this? Or like, what was the what propelled you? What kept you going in terms of finishing this?
I found that finishing it was not that hard. I was always a voracious reader, even in like second grade, where those were days where you could a kid could walk to the library and get a book and bring it home and go back and feel safe. But when I got to Fisk, I met an instructor called Dr. L.M. Collins, who was an amazing inspiration, and he taught a Harlem Renaissance class. He taught several different English classes, and I wasn't an English major, but I took every class that he offered, and I get inspired by reading a lot of besides Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston, County Cullen and some of the people that you might not be so aware of. And I always read, and after college, was right around the Watergate area, and I read everything political, everything associated with Watergate, and all the different biographies and autobiographies, and kept on reading. I was in Book of the Month Club, so reading was always something that came natural to me. Mm-hmm. Writing, besides what I started writing my little essays on Facebook, I ran into this woman that believed in magic. And she was quite an inspiration to me, and we would go over some of the stuff that I was writing, and I would read it to her. She'd make me read it to her. I wasn't really comfortable reading it to her, but I'd read it out loud. And then she would invite me or encourage me to consider a different point of view, which was her way of telling me, this is what you need to do, and just stop being an idiot. So a lot of my growth came through that process. And I'd like to thank you, Babz, Rawls-Ivy, for your help in helping me to be a writer, pushing me to do things like NaNoWriMo, pushing me to enter contests, pushing me to write, and then how to go over the stuff and review it. So I'd like to thank you as being partially, if not fully, responsible for the works I have out now.
Well, you are kind to say, but listen, you were already a writer. You already had the tools. I just blew in and just like, okay, I was like the wind a little bit, and but it was really you had all the good stuff. So now I understand this is going to be a series of books. Like you've already tempted us with the next iteration of this, the next body of work that is connected to this.
Yeah, Zane's Chillin' is next. And
talk to me about that. What is that about?
You'll find, as I was writing Strong Beginnings, what I found was that I was pulling towards another genre, actually. That a lot of what I wanted to write was not just historical fiction, but also maybe a little bit of sci-fi and fantasy.
Oh, that's a big deal right now too. Like that's a huge deal.
Yeah, Zane's Chillin' goes into a little bit more of that realm, and while it has some crossover characters from Strong Beginnings, I'm really still unsure in my mind as to which one people should read first, because you can read either one first and not be lost. Although if you've read Strong Beginnings first, all of a sudden you'll recognize, hey, I know that character, or hey, I know that character, and then find out that their character, there was more to them than you originally thought. And there's some characters in Strong Beginnings, like say Mercer is a character that, let me just say that Mercer turns out to be somebody that's famous, and Mercer is their middle name. Um,
Mm.
so so
I think I know this.
you might. And the book's not coming out until 2024. So the good news is it's already written, and I was going through some of my notes when I was talking to my friend Roger about some material I shared with him a few years ago. And I looked back and I saw I had the first 12,000 words written of the third in the trilogy. So is it okay to cuss on this show?
No, you can't. It's a family show.
Okay, just checking. Millie Jackson once said on her live album that, all the stuff I got coming out. that, so the next book of essays is going to come out before Black History Month. It's all going to be, so next month is going to be an essay collection about all the Black history you won't read about in Florida textbooks. And it's going to be probably about 35 essays because I'm going to leave out all the pictures this time. I found out that, the printing costs with all the pictures I had in the Estranged Americans drove up the cost of the book. So I'm trying to lower the cost of the book. So I'm going to eliminate a lot of the pictures.
Oh, okay.
But that's going to be ready, and it's going to be what I'm hoping would be something people can sit on their table and, it'll cause some discussions. Because I think one of the things in this book is, did you think Thomas Jefferson was stupid? Thomas Jefferson is credited for ending the international slave trade, which he did in 1807. But the reason he did it was to increase the price of domestic bred slaves, the ones that are being forced bred and raped, and to eliminate competition. So there was no path towards finally eliminating slavery on his mind. It was simply to increase the value of the ones he had, because Virginia and Maryland and Delaware had excess enslaved people because they had ruined the land by not rotating crops and doing some other stuff. So all the tobacco they were growing wasn't as profitable, and they had people they couldn't use it that were in need further south, for indigo and rice and cotton growing. So Thomas Jefferson gets credit for being a benevolent slave owner, where in the nailery that was on his land, they were whipping the teen boys to increase productivity. And there was a historian called Edwin Betts that found a letter describing it, and he covered it up because it didn't meet the narrative. So, and Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to George Washington saying that you can increase your profits by 4 to 10% by putting your money into enslaved people and having the women have a baby at least every 2 years. So this is the Thomas Jefferson that I know, and he wasn't stupid. He was a bright man. And as you'll find out if we ever get to Buckingham Jefferson, which is another one of my books that's down the road, you'll find out that Thomas Jefferson stuttered. You've never heard of Thomas Jefferson's speech or seen it. He stuttered. He had a bad stutter, and had he not had a stutter, he might have been able to been a little bit more of a player with white women and not have to deal with a 14-year-old slave girl. So that's the kind of stuff I write about.
Oh, yeah. Florida can't handle this. Nowhere in America can handle this. I mean, this is good conversation though, because I think in lieu of how we are banning books at the moment and trying to white out Black people's contributions to this country and to the world, that these conversations are necessary, and maybe some reading groups will spring up out of either one of these books, actually, because I think people appreciate. I mean, I think it's palatable when you can create a book like Strong Beginnings and talk about history and wrap a story around it, as opposed to just giving people like hard, unadulterated truth.
A book I'm very excited about, Buckingham Randolph Jefferson, I couldn't remember the whole name, is all kinds of history. It involves Thomas Jefferson, it involves Sally Hemings, it involves the Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, and there are stories that involve those events and how they affect the actual people. And while the characters in my book don't actually encounter Nat Turner because they're in North Carolina at the time, you find that hundreds of miles away, that white people were fearful after the Nat Turner uprising, and every slave anywhere was in danger.
Yeah.
And I was actually I first got a glimpse of that watching, I think, Roots 2, when he had a family there that the owner, I think it was Chuck Connor or somebody, almost shot one of the people that he owned, Chicken George, his son, because he was afraid that he was going to revolt against him, just because of what had happened with Nat Turner. You see some of that impact where a situation is created where lives are at stake because something happened hundreds of miles away that they weren't involved in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ain't that still the truth, though? Ain't that isn't that still pervasive? Isn't that still what happened?
Still the truth.
Still the
And
truth.
not just
Still
for
the
Black
truth.
people, for both Jewish people and Palestinian people, is it safe for anybody to walk down the street?
Yeah, it's tough. These are trying times, my friend. I so appreciate you having this time with me. It's so nice to talk to you. We hadn't had a good conversation in a very long time. So this is very nice.
It is.
It's very nice. I'm looking forward to poring over these books and reading them. I actually read your political writings quite often. And I pull every now and again, I get a chance to pull some for the inner city. So it's nice, it's refreshing, and I just think you're probably one of the best writers that I've read in a very long time. And I appreciate your voice on a lot of these matters.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me, and I'll appreciate hearing what you think.
I can't wait.
Something else.
Oh, I'll tell you.
Yeah, we've gotten past inviting now. You just want to tell me.
Well, I might still keep the inviting part. Bill, I invite you to consider. No, it's good. So thank you so much for your time this morning. It's really good to see you. Kiss all the granddaughters. Make sure you get more presents because you done outed yourself about the favorite. So now you got,
I didn't name her.
Oh, I love that. So now they're all gonna claim it.
It's me.
It's me. It's talking about me. It's talking about me. Oh, that is very smart and very shrewd. So, and say hi to Carol, and we'll talk again, my friend.
Okay, and she gets credit for the cover of Strong Beginnings.
I know. I love this cover. It's like, this is such a beautiful cover. It really is. When I saw it, I was like, ooh, I love these very Black people. So nice job. Nice job, Carol. Illustrator. Very nice. So, all right, Bill. Thank you so much for your time this morning. It was lovely.
All right. Thanks again.
All right. We'll talk again. We got more to talk about. All right. Okay, Harry. I'm out. I'll be back tomorrow. Y'all have a good rest of your day. And be sweet out there in these streets. Bye, Bill.